Recording video. And 3, 2, 1.
So, Steve, the Buddhists define suffering as the gap between what you have and what you want. By that definition, some of the richest and most successful companies in media are suffering a lot this week.
This week on Hacking TV, how YouTube wants to be cable TV.
And how Facebook wants to be YouTube.
And how Netflix wants to be CNN.
And we will have all that and more on Hacking TV for October 18th of 2015. We're going to be doing this forever, so we got to get the years in now. I'm Saul Hansel.
And I'm Steve Rosenbaum. And this is Hacking TV. So, welcome, Saul. Ready to hack?
We are hacking, and YouTube, which is the most successful hack in the space, is not happy with the fact that it is the leader in whatever the hell it does, and it wants to be something else too. And they've scheduled an event for this Wednesday and let it be known that they are going to announce a $10 a month subscription service to get more and better YouTube than you get for free. Does anybody want more and better YouTube?
Well, I mean, you have to start with what they're really concerned with, which is if, God forbid, someone's going to start paying for TV, they don't want to be left out of the party, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's like if people are going to start shelling out $10 a month for a collection of services, they don't want to be standing on the sideline being an ad-supported service when they could be, you know, competing with this new OTT space. I mean, they're not wrong. They're right to play.
They're not wrong. They're late. I mean, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, not to mention Comcast, Time Warner, Dish, and Google Fiber, for whatever the hell that is, has been doing this for a long time, but they've got to change what they're doing because everybody knows you can get makeup vloggers and cats on skateboards free from YouTube. So it looks like they have muscled some, not all, of the big media companies into giving them some content, but we don't know what. And according to the Wall Street Journal, the media companies are grumpy about it.
Well, you know, I mean, the problem with being the big player and the insurgent at the same time is, you know, those meetings negotiating fees and rev split and all that were not pleasant, right?
Well, that's what it means to be a big boy in the TV business, is to engage in unpleasant negotiations. Google's terms here seem to be they're going to keep 45% of the subscription revenue and throw 55% into a pot to get split. That's more than Apple's 30% take on the iTunes Store, but it's less than the unknowable but much higher take that Google takes on YouTube ads.
But let's just take a minute to feel sorry for those of us who toil in the vineyards of the maker space. I mean, this is from a consumer standpoint, God, it's getting noisy out there. And it's like, wait, I just want to know where I get the stuff I want to watch. And the fact that everything starts to get blurry and you have to pay $10 here and you pay $10 there and is kind of terrible.
It is terrible. It is getting harder to figure out what you want to watch and where you can get it. On the other hand, if you are a maker and you have something that works for the YouTube subscriber market, a group of people we don't know what they're like, there may well be some revenue, right? If you look at how the streaming services work in music, which this is very much analogous to, right? People who made a lot of money the old way hate them because it's different, but there are bands that can get stuff that people stream and get checks written to them from Pandora and Apple and so on. So there is a new angle that someone is going to be successful with, whether it's a lot or a little, and if it's good or bad for people, who the hell knows?
But just to be slightly negative for a minute here, if you're one of these YouTube, you know, celebs who, you know, they're now writing about these YouTube celebs that are making all this money, and YouTube wakes up and says, actually, you know what, we really just want to distribute mainstream media because that's how we're going to make our money going forward. Like, it could be the end of the whole YouTube grassroots ground up money making machine.
Oh, like what happened to blogs?
Yeah, you know, Yeah, like what happened to blogs,
That would
or
be my
MySpace.
guess as to what happens. The people who are good go pro in a new world of pro whatever that is, but it's a bigger set of people. But that said, there's nothing here that makes me think that YouTube is going to exclude, their friends from the subscription. They do want to get the pros into the mix, but it doesn't sound like this is like what Sony introduced, or which is all professional, or what I mean. The interesting comparison is what we talked about 2 weeks ago. You've got Watchable from Comcast and Go 90.
Go 90. How could you forget that name?
How could I forget that name? And those are some pro and a lot of these new media companies like Vice, the sort of new pros. And so YouTube has those guys giving away all that stuff for free, is trying to go upmarket to Time Warner and News Corp. Disney apparently says no. I don't know. I go back. I think what you said is right. Is you got to figure out where am I going to get what I want.
And as we've talked about a number of times before, this brings us, even as YouTube wants to be cable television, Facebook wants to be YouTube.
Right. So we've been talking about this a lot because it's a big deal. So we've now actually seen in the wild Facebook's new video hub.
Yes.
It apparently, the thing, and it makes sense, is it's a way to tell Facebook, I'm in a video mood. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think that sometimes people are in a video mood. So if you say, hey, Facebook, give it a shot at showing me videos I want, and never mind all those like texts and photos and GIFs. I don't know. You've looked at the images and talked to people. What do you think they've got?
So, I'm a believer that the difference between Facebook and Google fundamentally is Google has to discern my interests somewhat surreptitiously by reading my email or seeing what I'm searching on. Whereas Facebook, I click the like button. I say, I like this show on Netflix, and I like this movie, and I like this music. And it gives them, if they get it right, the ability to deliver to me a video experience that's deeply personal and kind of spot on and not creepy. And not creepy is a big deal. Not creepy is what we're going for.
Not creepy is good. Facebook is defined, I think, by a stream, right? It doesn't have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Search is not very good on Facebook. YouTube is more search, although as we talked to teenagers last week, people certainly get into the recommended video vortex, which is like a stream, but that's off to the side, as opposed to the main experience of Facebook is, I'm just going to go through things. And you can do that in video. We'll see what the length they have, what is it going to, what is it going to be, how social is it going to be. They have a lot to work with. It's interesting. Twitter, there's a story in The Guardian at the beginning of the week about Twitter's video strategy, which felt to me crisper. They were trying to get people to do 30 and 45-second videos that are very much in the tweet stream, right? You could argue that they're just trying to catch up with where Facebook's been for a while, but it sounds like they understand Twitter is about short. Facebook, I'm not sure what their sweet spot is in video. What do you, if you were going to program that equation for the personal video feed, what would you be looking for? Where's Facebook's opportunity?
Well, to me, the thing that's missing across the board is everyone's trying to cram everything into these tiny little vertical news feed like streams, whether it's Twitter or Facebook. And it tends to bias the entire experience toward, Donald Trump or Saturday Night Live or some terrible story about a car going in the river, but these big kind of shareable mass phenomenon stories. And I frankly think that you're missing an audience that, I'm not talking about super granular, but just as an order of magnitude, if I want to watch videos about technology, I'd like you to deliver a stream about what's going on in the technology space. And I think no one's done that yet. And it's until, again, we've seen the Facebook hub, but we haven't been able to touch it because it's not in either of our, they haven't, deemed to make it available to individual users yet. You kind of have, they're testing it. So all we have is a couple of screen grabs to guess what it's going to be when it grows up. But I'm hopeful that it looks more like a program guide.
That's so not Facebook. Facebook, because the most important data they have is, your social graph, your friends. I think they're more likely to be a better YouTube than YouTube, to give you a mix that's personalized by all the stuff they know about you. I think it's probably for others to add curation or structure or search. I mean, Facebook certainly could do it, but they are so, they are the leaders of feeds. So the first thing that they should do is make a really good feed.
So when you say others, I mean, you speak to the same spies and nefarious sources that I do on the course of your week. Without naming names, would others be former cable companies that own big buildings in Midtown Manhattan now? Or, I mean, who would these others be?
Well, everybody is trying, right? I mean, we talk every week about somebody has another combination of pro and amateur and in between and long and short and mobile and connected TV, right? We sort of know now a bunch of the ingredients. The question is, what combination? Our third story, I think, gets at how even people who've been very secure are getting less secure. I mean, Netflix has been, up until this moment, an entertainment company. I mean, when I was starting my TV news company, I spent a bunch of time with Reed Hastings trying to convince him that he wanted to be in the TV news business, and he said, we do entertainment. And their focus on long-form, scripted entertainment has gotten them incredibly successful, to my mind. But very deliberately, I'm going to read you 2 lines of dialogue from their earnings conference call. So you've got Reed Hastings, the CEO, talking to Ted Sarandos, who is their chief content officer. And Reed, who knows the answers to all the questions, says, what is the likelihood that we compete with Vice in the next 2 years? Probably high, Sarandos says. And they're signaling their investors that they are broadening their mission. And everybody wants to be doing everything. So they want to get into the news business in a way they didn't before.
But just to be fair, I mean, Vice has been being Vice for the last 17 years.
Yes.
It takes, as you know, being in the news business, I can say, look, I'll get a couple of computers and a bunch of smart writers and I'll be the New York Times next week. Pretty sure I won't succeed at that. And
you could say, it's hard to be in a movie studio. You can go hire Kevin Spacey if you want, but can you really make good scripted television?
But
the first time out?
Fair enough. And by the way, to their credit, they did. So sure enough, they could decide they want to be in the Vice business and they could spin up a Vice studio. But when you look at, for example, that Comcast is investing in BuzzFeed and Vox, I mean, they're acknowledging that if it were as simple as just buying a bunch of kids and putting computers in front of them to spin up their own digital media companies, they wouldn't be putting $200 million times 2 into those 2 companies. Those are big investments.
Sure, but you're Comcast and you own 17 zillion things. You're playing a portfolio bet, right? You are putting, roulette chips on lots of spaces on the board, and you'd be crazy not to put money into folks like Vox and BuzzFeed. Reed Hastings has a couple of strategic investments, but basically he's much more disciplined. It's a much more focused company. They mastered the post office with DVDs. They mastered buying reruns with streaming V1. Now they mastered being HBO, or did a damn good first shot at it. with the House of Cards generation, if they're signaling that they're going to do one more thing or two more things to flush things out, I see them very different. I am an unabashed Reed Hastings fan. I think he's the smartest guy in this world that I've met. And that's not saying that Brian Roberts is a dope, because he's not.
But in the build, I guess, but let's just put you on the spot. In the build buy, so now you're Reed Hastings, and you've got a checkbook, and you've got a lot of subscribers, and you decide you're going to be in news. Build versus buy. You're gonna. Is there something to buy? Are you going to go out and, try and, dig deep and buy Mike, for example?
Yeah, Mike is not.
No, I know. It was a bad. I'm just trying to think of what's for sale or what could be for sale.
I believe strongly that nobody has gotten close in terms of what news is going to be in this world. Vice has a very credible, provocative, interesting entry into this. Everybody else is doing little bits and clips.
What about?
I don't think anyone has figured that out. I mean, they could buy Turner, but
what about Now This News?
I think Now This. First of all, have you ever met anybody who watches it, and if they do they like it? I mean, the last I paid attention to them was about a year ago. They had achieved something miraculous. They had the youngest audience in the news business. I think it was 23 years old, but the average person in the audience watched them for 14 seconds a day. So what accomplishment is that?
So if I were Reed and I wanted to be in the news business, I'd put some money into Reddit.
I think Reed is a long form TV replacement guy. So my guess is he's going to build up the documentary business. Then if I were him, I would, and that's why they said Vice, do a 60 Minutes. I would hire a bunch of people out of, network and do a weekly news magazine, see where that takes me. And then once I built my weekly news magazine, I would start to extend out into the next thing, the commodity newscast, a la what Katie Couric may or may not be doing. I mean, I think there's a big business in it, and Reed could do it, but that's not the direction he's going to start.
Do you see who Vice just hired to do their HBO show?
Yeah, Josh Durango.
Yeah, I wouldn't guess his last name, but yeah, from Bloomberg.
Who is a very gifted journalist. To go from Bloomberg to Vice is an interesting thing, but Vice has lots and lots and lots of money, so they may as well do interesting stuff with it.
Isn't there a rumor Vice is buying a cable channel as well? Isn't that kicking around?
Didn't they do that? I mean, they've been talking about it. I mean, I saw Shane Smith talk last year, right? It's like, why not? And which brings us, I think, to the fourth thing, which was a trend story I think you wanted to talk about that was in the Journal this week.
Yeah, so, my friend Michael Wolff wrote this provocative book in which he said, television is the new television, and big media is going to subsume small media, and when it's done, everything's going to be back to the same, only in a different pipe. And it was a good read, but, I mean, one could argue that, saying that Citibank is going to be a big bank is not necessarily, taking a big gamble there. That being said, though, the Journal is now talking about a number of web properties actively looking to be television players. And, this is not a rumor. I mean, this is a fact.
So you've got, of course they are, because that's where the money is, right? So you've got like BuzzFeed and Vox and Huffington Post.
This is the old joke about, why do bank robbers rob banks, right?
Yeah. So this was, again, I'm talking up my dead business plan, but writing articles and putting little rectangles of ads next to them is a sucker's business, because nobody sells very much on little rectangle banner ads next to an article. It's just not a very good way of selling things. It's like a billboard on the highway. It's worth more than zero, but not much. Whereas if you interrupt somebody who's watching something for 10 minutes with a commercial, they'll put up with it maybe, not as much as they used to, but more than zero, and you can persuade them in 30 seconds of video. So you have a better product if you're selling to advertisers, selling commercials.
And by the way, you got to add to that list BuzzFeed, Vice Media, Huffington Post, and Vox are all have big television strategies that they're out roaming the earth looking to.
First of all, right? If you say video TV and TV's video is not interesting anymore, right? Of course you're going to want to be on any distribution channel, right? I mean, one of the several things Comcast is doing in this space is taking their latest set-top box, which, by the way, has a complete computer built into it.
You're talking about the X1 box.
The X1 box is just a computer with a browser and some other shit. So anything you could do on a PC, you can do on an X1. So why should you have to go buy, Comcast View and Apple TV or something else? Let's make the X1 be a great cable box and a great internet box. Are they there yet? I don't have Comcast. I doubt it, but they're thinking about it, right? So, I don't think the difference between TV and internet video right now is CPM, is ad rates, and to some degree distribution. So why wouldn't you be on the platform where you can get paid more, right?
From your lips to God's ears. Be on the platform where you can get paid more. I could get a T-shirt that says that.
I spent a lot of time trying to say that to people who weren't interested.
Well, but and there's still, to be fair, part of it is, you couldn't have known a year ago that, programmatic was going to come along as fast and ad blockers were going to come along as fast. I mean, a bunch of things happened to make the web inherently less valuable as television remained kind of unassailed in some interesting ways. So,
except the web was never very good. You could say 2 years ago the web, programmatic is basically a new name of a 10-year long trend or 15-year long trend. Ad blockers in the mobile context is a wrench that people didn't expect, but the ads don't sell anything, right? That's fundamentally, you can have all the ads you want, but if Procter & Gamble doesn't sell more soap, you're not going to sell them for very much money.
I just want to say that if I were editing this show, I might clip that last sentence out because it's so painfully accurate that it makes my side hurt.
You've got a business.
No, look.
You attract people who are interested in stuff, and you can put ads in front of them about stuff. You have a business model that I think is going to be a very important business model in the future.
So you have some numbers.
We're going to play a little bit of a quiz. I'm going to name the number, and from the same pool of headlines we've been talking about, and you tell me if you can remember what the number is. $12 million.
Oh, that's a hard one. Someone bought something. I actually don't. I'm not good at this.
You referred to it before. That's how much Forbes says PewDiePie earned last year from YouTube.
Yeah.
They went and calculated, that's not a bad living for sitting in your basement and telling jokes to your webcam.
Just to be fair, I'd love to have somebody from either YouTube or PewDiePie confirm that number. Like, I think a lot of people are in line to take a piece of his revenue before it comes to him, but based on traffic.
Forbes for, generations, when it was really Forbes and not some weird internet company with an old name that they bought from people who are no longer involved in the business, made up numbers about how rich people were, and people like to talk about the Forbes 400 and all those lists. And
I need to defend my friends at Forbes. I write for them. I think they're a wonderful journalistic organization, and I'm sure their numbers are right. Moving on.
Okay. Second, I only got two this time. 9%. Actually, I'm going to give you a better hint. -9%.
Yeah, maybe next time in the next show I'll play the other side of this game, and you can be the guy that knows the numbers. Is something's ad revenue falling year after?
It's a big deal number. It is. The average audience on the 4 broadcast networks during prime time in the first week of the new season is down from $10 million, not $1 million, 10 million people watching the combined four networks and 9.1 million people watching the combined networks. And that is after the ratings got tweaked to include DVRs and 4 days of streaming. So the big networks are not being, that's a big drop for 1 year.
I don't know about you, but here's my experience. I now collect video from multiple places, and I watch some of it on Netflix and some of it on Amazon Prime and some of it over grab ears on my TV and some of it, over, other places where it arrives on my computer. But even if my broadcast television viewing hasn't gone down in the last month, and I'm telling you it has, I don't know how you'd record that. I mean,
that's something that Nielsen and the networks are trying to figure out imperfectly. But this is where I agree with you and I agree with Michael Wolff. Like, the Michael Wolff's argument is, at the end of the day, a handful of big companies are going to own everything and it's going to look a lot like TV. You, for your whole career, have been building the bottom-up, widespread network of creators. I suspect that the head is still going to be very concentrated, and it will be concentrated among, some new companies that bought out the old ones, like Viacom bought out CBS, and some old companies that bought new companies. You talk about banks, that's what happened to the banks. But it will be a much, more even distribution. There'll be a lot more medium-sized players, and there'll be a lot more smaller players, because in a network world, it got cut off at 3. In a cable world, it got cut off at 200 or 500. Here, it doesn't get cut off. So there will be collectively a big tail that we never had in TV, but the percent controlled by the head will be down just a little bit from where it was.
So great place to get us to the end of the show, which is the New York Times came out with a really interesting kind of strategy memo this week. They said, we're going in a very specific direction. It was very clear. It was very strongly written. And it essentially said, we don't need to chase BuzzFeed. Like, we don't need to reach everyone. We need our audience to grow on digital. And they have a very clear strategy of how they're going to get there. And it was a life affirming is not exactly the word I mean, but it really was. I mean, the memo itself was very good-hearted and essentially said, we need to double our digital subscribers by the end of the decade, and we're good. And that's an achievable goal. And video is a critical part of how they're planning to grow digital, which they didn't really say what they meant by that. They said
they don't know, because they keep trying different things and none of it seems to be hitting. But it doesn't matter, because they have a business model that works, charging people a lot of money to get a product that rich people like, and their numbers are good, and they get, in a way, that this unique visitor thing that has dominated digital media for 15 years doesn't, which is, you don't need everybody. You need to be strong in the right group of people who will pay you for something and who will buy something from advertisers. And I think that it's, and they've crossed the hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, so the numbers are really pretty straightforward. Mark Thompson, relatively new CEO, I think he's now been there 2 years, said we're doing 400 million in digital, and our goal by 2020 is to get to 800 million. And I came away from that thinking, that's not a pie in the sky number. They've done it in 4 years. They're going to double it. Some of that is just going to be riding the trend of people moving from print to digital and using their phones more. And I'm an example of that. I'm a print subscriber, but increasingly I consume the Times through their digital offering, and that's changed a lot in the last 12 months. And so I'm probably I probably don't show. I'm probably already one of those 400 million subscriber dollars, because I've already got a mixed subscription of print plus digital. But you can see more people coming online to pay for the Times as digital.
Let's put those numbers into context, right? So I worked at the Times for a long time, and loosely speaking, the news operation, the journalists, cost $250 million a year. right? So the overall, the peak revenue of the New York Times newspaper, if I remember right, was about 1.2 billion, right? So if they're at 800 million, I mean, they're probably higher than, numbers go up, but, those are very strong, powerful numbers that say we can pay for a newsroom that is close to the size, maybe even bigger than we had. And that was always the question at the Times. It wasn't can the Times survive, it's how much revenue can we generate and how big of a newsroom can we afford to have. And those dotted lines say they don't have to change the order of magnitude of the size of the newsroom. They can have 1,000-person or 1,200-person newsroom.
And on that note, we'll have to wait and see what they do in video. We are out of time, but as always, a fabulous week. Nice to see you again.
We will be here next week.
Hack away, and we'll see you next week. We are out.
That was as good a show as we've done.
I concur. And we did it in one take.
We did it in one